We are going to learn how to make a seam. What you need to make a seam are two pieces of material. And the most important thing in making a seam is it matters. You can't just like randomly throw them together. You need to have the edges match up precisely. We are engineering this fabric together. And if you engineer it incorrectly, then you have trash. So make sure that you have your pieces lined up together. This is fairly small. What I would do if I was sewing a garment is I would put the pins in perpendicular to my sewing line, keeping that fabric held together. I am going to look at my machine where it says 5/8 of an inch right here. And I can see that if you can't figure out what yours is, guess what? You can use some sort of ruler. I'm going to use a seam gauge. From my needle to that line is 5/8 of an inch. If you are on one of my machines, it is the first long line away from the needle. You'll have some that are shorter, and then you'll have some that come down further, and it's that first one that comes down. I'm not going to start sewing right at the edge because that'll just make a mess like this. I'm going to start a little bit in, so I'm going to have to look at both the X and Y, math terms right there, of my fabric. This has to be over here on 5/8, and this has to be far enough in that I am going to be able to not have it munch. Again, hold your threads when you first start. Start slowly. Mine won't go because the light's not on. Sorry, I was trying to give you better ability to see, but that's not going to work. So I go slowly, 4 stitches about, and then I'm going to go backwards to anchor that stitch in the same amount. And I kind of went too far. Ooh, good. Alright, and then I'm going to, here's what I'm watching. I'm watching the edge of the fabric. The needle, I already know the needle's going to go up and down, up and down, up and down. I don't have to watch it. I need to watch the edge of my fabric to make sure it stays at that 5/8 inch line. I don't sew over pins. That's how you break pins and break your needle. So take them out when you get to them. Again, go at a speed that is comfortable for you. Watching the edge of this fabric. Now I'm watching the edge over here, using my hand wheel. Don't go to the very, very, very edge, but super close. Back stitching about 4 stitches, and then you can sew off of your fabric. That's how you do a seam. Cut these threads, and I have a cutter on the side of mine. You might on yours, otherwise use scissors. So here's my seam, my fabric, my seam allowance, and what you are going to do is, hopefully, again, you have irons. You're going to iron this open. If not, you'll just do it with your fingernail again and get it like that, because I want to see that you have sewn a seam with a seam allowance. And then we are going to do a couple of different finishes. The first one we're going to do, if you look at your paper, is a zigzag. I have to think because I don't have the paper in front of me. So you're going to need to set your machine up to do a zigzag. Mine's pretty easy. I just have to turn a knob. Yours is pretty easy. You just have to turn that top knob on the top right, the outer part, over to a 3 or a 4. And then here's what we're going to do. I just had you press this so it's like this. Now I want you just to take one side of your seam allowance. See how I did that? Put it under your presser foot. Remember, the presser foot is what keeps the fabric pressed against the feed dogs. And you're going to zigzag. And you see I'm not doing it on the very end. I'm actually have my presser foot, so here's my seam, here's the end of my fabric, and it's right in between. And I'm going to go to the end. This is one way, and you can backstitch if you want or not. This is one way of finishing a seam, which will help it not unravel when you're washing it. The other side, and if you look on the back of your paper, you've got 3 there. I'm going to make a hem on just the seam allowance. I'm not going to do it this way because then that does not look pretty. I am seeing this raw edge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it this way so it almost comes down to your stitching line. My iron's not on, so I'm not going to take time to iron it. But it holds better if you do. And then press this over evenly. See, I can't get it even with my fingers while I'm making a video. And then all the other seam allowance and my 2 pieces of fabric are away from me, and I'm going to remember to turn my machine back to a straight stitch, and I'm going to sew this little hemmed part down, and I am going to back stitch on here, and then I am, oops, got it caught. Hopefully that'll work. Yes. I am going to stitch down the middle. Do not stitch close to the fold. If you're going to stitch close to either side, it's going to be closer to the cut edge of the fabric, or the raw edge as we call it. When we're talking about sewing, back stitch at the end. And then you have 2 seam finishes. Those are the ones I know everybody can do with the machine. The other 2 are ones that you will need either a serger. Okay, here's what this should look like. So you will take a picture of this, put it in your magazine on a page. And I will show you the other 2 in the next video.